What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Seller Club podcast.
Yo, yo, yo. How
Yay.
are y'all doing? Glenn's so happy today, huh? Yay.
Is that a yay?
Yay! Episode number 7.
Yay!
Episode
Yay.
number 7.
I was like, did he say yay or hey? Either way, I'll take it. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, hi, guys. What's up? What are y'all doing?
Hi.
Hi. You know what?
No.
I know you're not talking because we haven't dropped the beat yet. Let's just go ahead and drop the beat, and then we'll talk.
I can't think without dropping the
There we go. That's so much better.
beat.
Now we're
Much
ready.
better.
Now we're
Now
ready.
yeah, go ahead, please. Let's continue.
Oh my goodness. Well, welcome to episode 7. Can you believe we're already at 7?
And that was super
So-
quick.
That
I
was
know.
What's our
fast.
topic for today?
It's been really fun. Well, today we're going to pop the hood and look into some of our processes, because I believe fundamentally that, especially the running a business side of things, your success depends heavily on your ability to create processes that work really well. And I bet that we all have slightly different processes. We probably all have room to improve some of our processes, and really in the spirit of just, being transparent and also inviting other people who might be listening to this to take a look at their own processes. I think it'd be cool for us to kind of look into that. So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think process is very important. I would kind of call it like your business habits. It is a thing that you create, and it becomes the standard operating procedure, right? Everything.
Yeah.
When this happens, this is what you do. So it's kind of like you have built a reaction based on every business scenario that happens. What do you think about the word process, Glenn, or our topic for today?
I mean, would you say there's a big difference between... Well, what about process and, like, routine? I mean, process is kind of like... Well, I don't know. I feel like there's very similar things here. I feel like once you get into, like, a reseller, you're a full-time reseller, and you're like, man, I don't want to do the same thing every day, because that's what I did when I worked 9 to 5. But then if you don't get into, like, a process, routine type of thing, it's going to be very difficult to
Yes.
manage
That is a
business.
good question. That's a good question, because when you talk about routine, it may be like chronologically doing the same thing over and over again, but a process could be in a different schedule. Let's say, if you have a routine of shipping every morning, that means it's very time sensitive and you're doing the same thing every morning. But you could have a process for shipping that it doesn't have to be every morning. You could ship at night. You can ship in the afternoon. As long as you're meeting your shipping deadlines, I don't think it matters. So maybe the question now that you brought up that routine or process, let's throw in the word priority. What's priority in our process, right? Like when we're executing certain process in our business, what's priority? So how do we, figure out what do we have to do first?
Yeah, totally. I think your processes should reflect your priorities, right? And as a business owner, for better and for worse, we have a greater degree of control over our processes. So if the priorities need to change, the good news is we can change them, right? Maybe more easily than if we were working for somebody else. But I think two things that you guys are already kind of touching on that I think are really important about process are that, number one, it creates kind of like a standard, right? Or like best practices, like you said, Ken. It's your standard operating procedure. And number two, that your process is like you said, Glenn, it would be more difficult if you didn't have one. And in my mind, the first thing I thought of when you said that was that you'll have to constantly be Well, figuring it out, right? Like you're in the constant state of figuring it out. And whereas if you have a process, you already know. That's one thing that you don't have to think about. There's no guesswork because there's already a process for that. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but for me, you know, like running a business, I mean, reselling stuff is super fun, but like also you're running a business, and the less decision fatigue you have, the better. So the less time and effort you're wasting on remaking decisions that could already be made for you if you had a good process in place, I think you're better off when you have those processes, because it's like exhausting, right? To constantly be making decisions, to constantly be calling the shots, or trying to figure out what's the best way to do this, that, or the other. Like if you already know and it's already established, then you don't even have to spend any mental energy on it, and you don't have to waste any time on it because you already are aware of the most efficient way.
I like that. I like that. So, I want us to go around. Like, what are the things that we already have in place that keeps us from having decision fatigue? What are what do we do on certain things or certain scenarios when it happens to our business? So let me start. Right, for me, one of the first thing that we have in place for our process is we always try to ship things out first before we do anything else, because it kind of the process, of eliminating stuff that has already sold in your inventory or your floor or your table kind of like declutters the area.
Yes.
So it helps us set up for what we're doing next. So that's the biggest thing that we have implemented as part of our process, that before we list, before we take on a different, batch, or before we start the day, we have to like ship everything, get everything, because when shipping, like there are a lot of clutter that comes around with it, right? Like extra boxes laying around, or tape, or just kind of like when you're reusing boxes, there's like old labels that are laying around. So we kind of trying to like get rid of those, throw all the trash, kind of like reorganize a little bit. So it kind of like really sets us up for blank, clean slate. So that's what we do. What do you, Glenn? What do you do? What are some processes that you do every day?
I'm so glad this is not a video version. I just have like a bunch of poly bags right next to me, and like a bunch of boxes behind me, and I'm rugged. I have like a mustache with like, I don't know, random facial hair, and it's it's Q4 time when
you're in the thick of it right now.
There's no process, so apparently Glenn doesn't have a process on the outward appearance right now.
He had to shift his priorities, Ken. Just like
exactly. They shifted. Now look at him. He's rough. Yeah. Well, I guess the process with processes can also change. Mm-hmm. So when Joel Embiid says, trust the process, what does that mean, Kenny? Trust the process.
What do you trust right now? What's the process that you trust the most right now in your business?
Do you trust eBay to come through with great sales? Customer acquisition?
Yeah.
Is that like, trusting the process?
What processes are we trusting in? Yeah.
Well, I guess, for me, the process of shipping early is definitely the number one.
And that's kind of like your routine, too. Process and routine, because Glenn ships every morning.
Every morning. And it was never like that either. And I'm trying to get into a process of listing right after that. So kind of like getting morning listings up, trying to set the day,
So you eat your breakfast and then you ship, and then do you leave to drop it off, or do you list and then drop it off?
I don't even eat breakfast first. I actually go straight to the storage unit, grab the items. I'm kind of tired. I come back. Then sometimes, this is not really a good mindset, but sometimes I'm like, hey, if you want to eat, let's just get this stuff done. The faster I can get this done,
faster than you.
Yeah, you reward yourself to
I
motivate
reward
yourself.
myself.
His process before he eats is to do work.
What's wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
But that's what I try to do that, and then I guess because there's also a part of me that wants to just like relax and eat breakfast instead of like eating on the run and shipping
Right.
and like
Feeling like I gotta hurry up and get to this.
yeah, like one hand is like a breakfast burrito, the other hand's like a hat. Accidentally
Yeah.
eat the hat instead of the burrito, or
That
bite
would be
the hat.
terrible.
Ship the burrito. Ship the burrito.
Get the hat, yeah, ship the burrito. Get the hat all dirty with other. Yeah, we can't
Grease.
have that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So,
Oh man.
definitely
Power of process.
shipping first. Yeah, shipping first. Then I'm trying to get into a listing process after that. But one of the things that Ken told me that made a lot of sense that I think is really difficult, but I want to do better on implementing it. And I think every reseller should, which is treating your business like a franchise to where the processes are so tight knit that you know exactly how to do every single process of your business, that anybody could just jump in, read this manual or watch a video and know exactly how to run the business if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think is obviously useful if you're going to train somebody to do any part of the life cycle of your items, right? Like I've trained people to do different parts of processes, but not really anybody to do the whole entire thing to replace myself entirely. I think in a pinch, probably John could, because he's just been here the whole time and he knows how everything works in general. But like, I would still have to leave him some detailed instructions if he was going to just step right into my shoes if I was going to be gone or something for a week. But also, like, you know, if something were to happen to me, like, could anyone pick up and run my business and know where to pick
Can
up?
we go to your place and you know,
because that's
operate the
another
business? Yeah.
like real question as a business owner. Like, would you want your entire revenue stream to just stop in its tracks and like have to have your store shut off? Or
Right.
you know, I mean, that's actually something I want to put in place next year, is like having basically like a written document that's like, here's what to do in case of I'm not here all of a sudden and now you have 10,000 items to deal with. And I mean, by all means, like, somebody could just come and like donate them and be done with it, but you know, that's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that's already been put into something that's worth a lot of money. So also someone could pick it up and keep going, you know?
Yeah, I think when you know, talking about like, you know, the whole like treating it like a franchise, a lot of that is, I think, before them selling it as a franchise, I think the process gets refined so much that it becomes so efficient.
Right.
I think efficiency really becomes the bottleneck for a solo entrepreneur or a dual entrepreneur.
Yeah.
When you get to a scale, I would say when you're trying to net over six figures, I think that's when efficiency really has to be the priority of your
Really dialed in.
process. You know, like for example, like the biggest shift that we did was like, how many boxes do we really need? So that was the shipping process that we established that actually affected a lot of things around it. And we actually sourced differently because of our shipping process. And that was only because if I want to sell 100 items a day, I want to be able to ship 100 items a day, you know, very efficiently.
Right.
I think one of the things that we have now is when we're taking photos is our photography area, that it's literally like kind of like built like a U shape, that the person is in the middle of the space, that the person would turn to the left and then bring the product to the front and then put it to his right. So it's kind of like a very fluid motion that we have built. That way there's no running around, standing up, finding a place where to put the next inventory. So I think that's a process of efficiency that now we're able to hire a high schooler to do the photos for us. And now all he needed to do was just to watch JC do it one time, and he literally picked it up like right there. And
Yeah.
and because it's like, okay, you grab from the left, you put the product to the middle, and then you store to your right. So I think that's one of the things that it actually will benefit you in the longer run if we create processes that prioritize efficiency.
Yeah, because even if you're teaching someone else or you're hiring someone else, you have all these decisions to make about, are you paying them per item? Are you paying them per hour? And, regardless of which way you do it, you have a much narrower, like, window of expectation of how long it should take someone to do one item,
Certain
or
tasks,
how
yep.
or how many things they could get done in an hour, because there's not that much variability.
Yep.
Like, people move at different speeds, but it's not going to vary that greatly if
that
the
much,
process
yep.
is really dialed in.
Yeah, so we're now, like, because we've built that, whenever Braden comes in to take photos, he's down to 2 minute, 2 minute per item, 2 minutes per item, to take photos. So then we could like be more efficient on that.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question for you guys. Just thinking, just stewing on all of this. I have processes for pretty much every step in my store, but especially now that I'm in a new, like, physical location, I'm going to be taking some time to examine those and make sure that there's nothing else I can tighten up. It's a different situation than it was before, so some of that I've kind of audited already since I've moved. Some of it I haven't. But I'm just curious, like, if someone is listening to this episode and they're like, well, that sounds great, but I'm pretty much just winging it all the time, going with the flow, going where my feelings take me. Do I feel like sourcing? How much do I feel like reinvesting? How much do I feel like prepping my workspace or whatever? But if somebody's not super process oriented, because I bet that doing your own thing is probably really appealing to a lot of people with that type of personality, right? Yeah. So it's like a little bit of both to be successful in business. It's like you might be really drawn to that for personality reasons, but you also have to embrace a process at some point. So if we're talking with somebody right now who doesn't really have processes like that, like, think about the life cycle of your items. Like, where would you suggest that they would start? Or, like, what are some areas where they could develop a simple process for themselves? Like, shipping is a great one, like you just said, Ken. Like, what is your shipping process? What is your photography and listing process? Like, what are some other areas, like, or what would be the best place to actually start?
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Glenn?
Well, we didn't get to finish what Anna was saying. I guess what your, maybe, because we talked about shipping, me and Ken being our, I guess, first thing we do. But what would you say yours first, Anna? Then we'll go to the question.
Okay, that's fine. I accept that alteration. Well, because I'm not like you guys. I don't ship every single day. Unless it's really busy, like, then I will, just to, I won't reflect that in my handling time. I'll still have, like, usually 2 days on average as my actual handling time in my store. But if it's like, okay, this is going to pile up so much after 2 days, then I will still ship every day. But I do think I still do things in a similar way in terms of, like, what's the order of operations that makes sense. So, like, I'm not going to integrate new inventory into my inventory storage if I haven't pulled everything that's going to ship that day. Because, like, I might free up an entire bin. Like, who knows if something, like, larger sells or whatever. So there are some things like that that are just more like a logical flow, where it's like, okay, well, even if I'm not going to ship this until tomorrow, if I'm going to integrate new inventory in today, then I'm going to go ahead and pull everything out so that I have the most possible space and I can make it the most efficient. But I do think one area that I have a process, and since I'm only kind of freshly back into, like, a regular flow of listing new inventory, I'm, like, coming back into this process, which I haven't done in a while. But pretty much whenever I get new items, I will kind of, like, prep them first, where I'm, like, putting them, I might be, like, taking off tags or cleaning them up or doing all that. Then I'm putting them in my inventory log, like the spreadsheet, so that by the time I'm doing photos and getting the drafts ready, like I already have the title, I've already logged the information about like cost of goods, where I bought it, and all the neurotic little things that I log about everything, which is optional, but that's important to me, so it's built into the process. But, you know, I basically already have those items in my inventory spreadsheet, and so the last thing that happens is I take their photos, put them back in the bin, or put them, you know, into the bin that they're going to be like stored in long term. And then like they're done. Then they go and get filed away into like the basement bins, like set up. And all I have to do is like say, you know, list this item on the draft. So that's kind of a process that has always served me really well, because it keeps me from having to make decisions about which step to do next. It also helps me to stay really organized and not get confused at all about any of the items, like what's listed and what's not listed, or where are these things in the process versus those things. And also, you know, there are some things that I feel like I freakishly remember about a lot of items, like what I paid for it and where I got it. But, you know, not always. Like, that's not completely foolproof. So I like to log all the information that I want to be able to track. I want to log that into my, like, inventory as soon as I can, so that it's like, okay, I just bought this today. I'm going to try to get this logged before I go to bed tonight, you know, so that information is, like, dumped out of my head into the spreadsheet. And there's, like, no question about any of those data points that I might need later. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
I like that answer. I like that answer. And
Right.
I know,
Well,
I
it's
mean,
the
Ken, there we go. Ken also had like a good point that like him and JC, I don't know if it's still the same process you guys do now, but like how everything needed to be listed within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And like that's a process that I feel like anybody and all sellers should try to implement, if that's even possible.
I think it's that process. It's a very aggressive process, because you know I've said it. We'll sleep after everything's done.
And Glenn
but
will eat after everything's done.
Yeah, so there you go. So that's you know, it's like survival. Then Anna, like, you can drink water after you're done. You know, so
Right.
like putting
If I
survival,
don't die of
yeah,
dehydration first.
putting survival to the very end of the work is very good when you're trying to build something. I think because I feel like we try to do it still up to this point, but there's some certain freedoms that you afford after you've built the business to a size already, that it's kind of like, okay, you can maintain, you can relax, but if you're trying to grow a business and you're trying to get it to the next level, 100%, I think that's the most effective process. Do everything within 24 hours, because there are more opportunities coming in the next 24.
I think it's really good to challenge yourself on that too, because like, I mean, just like I'm doing right now, when you have a good process that serves you really well, even if you, for, you know, valid reasons, stop using that process for a period of time, you can return to it. And it's like, you know exactly how to do it. Again, it's like still taking the guesswork out, even if you've spent some time without it. I mean, when I first started, like, I had a bunch of rules for myself just to reduce decision fatigue about things. Like, I mean, I had a lot of rules about sourcing, which now I don't. Now I'm like way more like free and, you know, in the moment, like my mental capacity is freed up to make those decisions in the moment. But, you know, before, when it would just be easily overwhelming when I was trying to create processes about everything, trying to make decisions, like I had rules about how much money I would spend on inventory, what percentage of my sales I would reinvest. And it's just like, that's it. Those are the rules, and I'm sticking to the rules. And the rules have already been decided. And, you know, because I was trying to figure out my process in like every step of running the store, it was like really helpful to have some stuff just nailed down that would be, you know, that would work, that I didn't have to like question or think about or decide all the time. So yeah, I think you're right though. Like, if you want to grow, it also really helps, no matter what your starting point is with discipline, it helps to discipline yourself, because you need to be able to do that at times. And, you know, whether you're naturally inclined to be good at discipline and self-control or not, learning how to be better at it is like never going to go, you know, is never going to not help you unless it gets unhealthy, which don't worry, next time we're talking about when reselling becomes an addiction. So,
well,
I mean, yeah.
Well, pulling back things to the other topic that we're going to discuss is like how do we audit or how do we create process, right? Trying to, for the people that are listening, how can they start? Let's just say I don't have a lot of process in place right now. I'm just trying to do, things as they come. Glenn, I think you're Mr. Process Man or Mr. Routine. How did that come along? I mean, I'm sure like early days, back in the money order days, did you have a process already then, or how when did process come into your business?
Oh, I guess process and routine kind of made its way in from like even just going to garage sales and things like that, because it's like, all right, every Saturday 5 a.m. this is what time we're going, this is where we're meeting, like me and my friend would go, this is what's gonna happen. So that was kind of already like a routine type of process.
So you started with sourcing. Sourcing.
But I would say if someone wanted to like start from the beginning and figure out like how do I start my own process, I would first write down what are the steps in your business that you have to, I guess, do in order to maintain it and keep it running. So obviously there's a shipping, there's a sourcing, there's a storing the items, maybe prepping the items before photos, and write down a little, step by step. And then if you want to go even further, then you time yourself on how long it takes you to do those steps. So
I love it.
You would have to, all right, let's say for, Ken starting off with shipping, I start with shipping. What's your first step? Well, step number 1 for me is to figure out what items I'm pulling.
Yep.
So what I like to do, I like to go desktop version first, even though, I have everything in the custom SKU on what bin it's in. I don't like to go through the phone. Number 1, my service is bad at the storage unit. So
ain't that the truth?
I know. So if I don't want to get stuck to where like I don't even know, how do I get back to this item if I'm trying to figure out a certain size or something like that. So I go desktop version first. I just like to do like a quick like screenshot, or if I know like storage unit 1 has these items, then I'll already have like those items on my phone. Here's where they are, and then here's the other storage unit where those are. Then I come back. Then I have to. Sometimes I like to start off with the authenticity guarantee shoes.
Before FedEx label.
Yeah, FedEx label. It's a little bit easier. I don't have to go by weight. You know what I mean? So that I can knock out those. Then I usually go hats. Those are a lot easier too, because most of them weigh the same. I have the same box, I have the same poly bag, and the hats weigh the same. Then I go to, that's usually kind of like the miscellaneous, which could be like, golf shoes, jerseys, or jackets or something. So I like to go in that order, and that's usually like my process for shipping. So the next step would be like, well, how long does it take for each if you wanted to do that yourself? How long does it take? Do you follow those type of steps, and you do that for every, I don't know, process in your business?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I could, I guess a tip that we have done differently this time is now we print out the packing list or the pick list. For eBay, there is a pick list. And JC's a very kind of like visual person, so she likes to mark and crush things out.
Yes,
I love that. I mean that's the Anna side, like I could totally see because I've seen your notebook and it's very colorful.
Disaster.
So what she would do is she would print a pick list. So if you want something in hand, so you could screenshot it, like Glenn said. The desktop version is a very more laid out style that it has more details. So either screenshot it or print a pick list and then mark things out as they are. And then breaking down what Glenn does, he tries to go with path of least resistance at first,
The low
right?
hanging
So he would go,
fruits.
yeah. So he goes like the easy. You don't have
Yeah.
to think about it. It's a FedEx label for sneakers. It doesn't matter what weight. It goes up to 7 pounds. It doesn't matter what box. Put it in a
Mm-hmm.
box. Well, obviously it's a brown box. You can't use USPS box. Put
I
it
was gonna
there.
say that.
Yeah, ship it
Not a
right,
priority
and then
mailbox. Yeah.
that's kind of like how we do it. And also too, when we're shipping, is we ship UPS too for heavier sneakers or boots, because we still sell boots too. And then you could do UPS, and then we go USPS. So in kind of way, like it makes it easier if you do it like that, because when you're
Yeah.
taking things to your car, then we're actually putting FedEx first and then
Right.
UPS first, and because we do drop offs, and Glenn does drop offs too, right, Glenn?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it makes it easier because it's kind of like segregated rather than kind of like, okay, if you ship individually per item, oh, like, oh, this is a UPS, oh, this is a FedEx, this is a UPS, this is a USPS. Now all of a sudden, like, it just kind of like
Yeah.
scrambles your brain that, okay, oh, can I use this box, can I use that box? It's like, no, like, the first, all these items you can't use USPS, all these items all USPS.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is eliminating a lot of decisions, and I think that that's kind of a theme in a lot of the processes when you're dealing with physical inventory. If you group things that are similar based on whatever criteria, like I even do the same thing. I might be pulling, I mean, I love to post on my stories and Instagram, like, here's all the random stuff I'm shipping today that's like totally disparate and just like all kinds of different random stuff. But I do that too, like the lightweight, small, easy stuff that goes in a certain type of bubble mailer or whatever. I'll do all of those first. And then, I usually save the most complicated, fragile,
Yep.
double boxed, whatever for last,
Mm-hmm.
because then if I end up having to spend like 20 minutes on one thing, which stinks, but sometimes it's still worth it depending on the thing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I haven't bottlenecked all these other things, and all those other shipping labels have already been created. Those buyers are already notified that their thing is shipping. Like, it's just cleaner that way. But it's true when you're doing anything, when you're photographing, not having to constantly change your setup if you sell miscellaneous things. Like, do all the similar things that you're going to do today at once, and then move on, and then do clothes next, and then do shoes next. All of that, like, really does save you time, really a lot of time, and a lot of like mental energy. But I
Yep.
think no matter
So
what part of the process, grouping is definitely a big deal.
yep.
Yeah.
So there you go. Make sure you group things together.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like a good measure if your process is efficient, because the more scramble it is, or the more random it is, the more
Yeah.
time it usually takes, because it's hard to get on a groove, right? It's hard
Yeah.
to get a pattern. I mean, like, I feel like a lot of us really appreciates a pattern
Yeah.
that makes it easier to repeat it. So that's really good. I mean, I think one of the things that we could discuss as far as process is like for sourcing. I think this is kind of like we can give two perspective. I'll take over the interviewer role here with Glenn and Anna. Glenn, talk about the process, because I know we've talked about this in some of our level up programs before. What's the process for sourcing? What are the things that we have created to actually help us alleviate the random, like, oh, maybe I'll stop there, oh, maybe I'll stop there, to actually have a goal. We actually have created routes within our city. So Glenn, talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I was gonna also say that maybe the sourcing part would be the only thing that really can break your process. Um, because let's say there's something really good at store number one, and for us, if it's like a retail ARB store like a Ross, a Burlington, a Nike outlet, you're gonna hit all the other ones and probably even go further out than you normally
Mm,
do on your routine because this item or these items are out there. So that could break the process. But process and routine for sourcing is already mapped out. So, for example, when we used to do Out Hustled and go to a brand new city we've never been to before, we already knew this is where our hotel is. This is the first store we're going to start at. And then we're going to hit, these freeways and hit the same, route until we make our way back and try to be more efficient that way. And you would do that in your own city and probably hit those same stores every day. Some people, though, my process is I'm not leaving this store until I find a certain amount of items. Or I'm not done sourcing until I hit this amount of potential profit. So the sourcing part could kind of throw everything off, maybe timing wise as well, if you have so many other things you have to get done. So the sourcing part is a little different. And even with online, there was like a site ran a pretty good sale. I had stuff come in the last couple of days. I have to count those items, make sure those items are there, and unbox them. Where am I going to put them? Store those. Meanwhile, still have to source. So that's also a little different. Go back to the interviewer, Kenny, the host.
Yeah,
or do you want Anna to answer the same question?
Well, no. So
Anna,
what's the process, right? For you, has there been a especially when you were building up to your first grind of getting to your first 10,000 items listed, what was that process like, or what has helped you the most in kind of like being more efficient in sourcing?
Well, I think in general about processes, they're either just born or they're borrowed. And I borrowed a lot of my processes hearing about other people's processes, which is another reason I wanted us to talk about this today. Because, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, if there's something that you hear that we do that might be a good starting point for you, like, please steal it, do it, try it out, alter it, make it fit for you, right? But otherwise, processes are born, meaning that, they occur organically and usually out of some kind of a problem-solving situation. And so I just, having never been in really a niche and seeing like the kind of rich opportunity that's everywhere, I've never had a really clear process for like a route or anything with sourcing, but I will say that a lot of times it's on more of a micro level that I will create a process for today when I'm sourcing. Like, a lot of the places that I like to source or the types of sources I like are things like yard sales and estate sales, and you're kind of beholden to like whenever those are happening, right? So maybe I'm planning my day around the times that I know these certain sales are happening, or I'm going to go to kind of, if I'm just going to go sourcing all day or something, like right now, I would try to hit, as many places as possible, but I'm still going to be really thorough. So like my process of sourcing for the day might be, well, first I'm going to go to the yard sales because all the good stuff is going to be gone, after the beginning. Not always true, but often true. And then maybe at the last part of the day, I'm going to go hit up the thrift stores in that area because, they're kind of more always there, always putting new stuff on the floor. It's not as much of an urgency kind of situation. But then on a more micro level, when I'm at a certain place, like I'm going to try to look through everything twice. I'm going to look through it all once, and then I'm going to look through it all again backwards because go in reverse order because I always miss stuff. And so, I've got my process for like in the moment, I've got my process for the day, but beyond that, it varies so much. I'm not trying to get a certain number of things like per time I go out sourcing or whatever. I have a lot of flexibility with that. So I just, in that way, I do go with the flow. But, when I was first starting, to your question, like it did help me to kind of set goals. So I would usually kind of have to set a goal based on, okay, I have $20 that I can spend at this thrift store today. Maybe I could spend 3 hours there, or I could spend 1 hour there, or 20 minutes, however long it takes, but I only have $20 to spend, so I'm going to find the best stuff that I can find with that $20. Like, there were definitely times in the very, very beginning where that was literally my budget. Like, until I sell some more stuff and have some more capital, like, today I have $20, I'm going to go make the most of this $20. And, not waste a whole bunch of time and go way out of my way in the meantime. Like, I would try to find a reasonable source to go check out, and there's a high probability I'm going to find something really valuable that I can spend my $20 on, then great.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, I think it really does boil down to priorities in that way too. But
Right. And I think one of the things that I want to add on to, like, just the different sourcing process that we have, um, first, I think, is at least have a process, right? At least have
yeah,
something, because it's kind of like it guides you, whether it's a very strict process or a very loose. At least there's some structure to it.
yeah,
Structure. I'm not a very structured. I'm Mr. Wing It, but knowing that, this processes or structures will help me, get to wing it more other items
yeah,
or other things in
exactly,
life.
exactly.
Yeah, I'll wing the other things, but this one needs to be structured. So one of the things that I wanted to add is, like, at least have like a I would say like a map, or how do you check out a store, right? For example, um when me and Glenn go travel, um our process is drop him off at the front door. I go park, and
See ya.
he goes to the men's section, right? And then I go to the women's section. And then we go meet at the clothing section. And that's just, we don't even have to, like, hey, you go here, you go here. Like that, even pointing each other where to go is a waste of time. So me and JC have created the same process.
Yeah,
Now at every Nike, we go to the back wall first on size 10, 11, and 12. That's where we look first. And then she goes to size 13, and then I go to size 9 and smaller. And
yeah,
on to the women's, and she goes to the men's clearance clothing section. So that is not a negotiable process for us anymore, that, like, oh, let me freestyle this. Like, no, like, we cover more grounds doing this, we're more
yeah.
efficient doing this. So even in a, when you have an everything store, you still have to have a process, because,
Oh
like, okay,
yeah,
what's the most valuable thing? Probably, like,
yeah.
like, I'm thinking, if I went to a garage sale, I personally would, and Anna, like, correct me, or give me your process. If I'm envisioning it, I go to a garage sale, I'd be looking for, like, kitchen equipment, like mixers
Mm,
and blenders and stuff like that, like expensive, high end value.
yeah,
I know KitchenAid, I know Cuisinart, I know certain
yeah,
things.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and there's
and
no like,
then
there's no consistency necessarily if with the garage sales, for example, of like how people set it up. Like you can't
mhm,
go in and know like, okay, there's a back wall to look at first or whatever,
yeah, right,
but
right,
you
right.
can look for what things are prominently displayed. What are the most expensive things? Because
Yeah,
those
or
are
like
probably going to be
the
the most
bigger
valuable
things, right?
things.
The bigger
Yeah,
things, right? Yeah, that's true.
Then you
Or
have
you
the
could go
random
find
ones.
yeah, or you could find the smallest ones, because they could be
right,
like jewelry or something like that.
right. It's like
Or I was
it
gonna
really, yeah,
say
it really depends.
that you just, just like the store, you go to Nike Outlet. Hey, you guys have any retros in the back? You still have to ask
Mm.
questions. So you go to the
Yeah,
garage sales. You guys have any video games?
right.
Like, oh yeah, you know what? My son doesn't play with this,
Oh yeah, my son's gonna
whatever
kill me when I
anymore.
sell these to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, how
Yeah,
much? Oh, $50.
yeah.
I'll do 20. Just kidding. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, right. 100%. No, it's true. I mean, there's all kinds of, yeah, kind of specific processes you can use. I mean, I've heard numerous people say, when I get out of my car, I am friendly and I start engaging the people as I'm walking up their driveway because I'm trying to build a
That's very
little
important.
micro relationship right there. You know, like there's a lot of, and that's the thing, like when you're regularly doing these activities, like all those little things start occurring to you because you are doing it over and over again. And it's like, huh, how could this be like more effective? Or how am I doing too many steps to accomplish this one task in the process? You know, as you're going about your business, if you can kind of turn on your observer self and observe yourself doing what you're doing and see like, is there a way that this could be more tightened up? Like, I think that's a good question to ask yourself if you're doing any part of the process, because a lot of it comes naturally, but one little change might make a big difference.
Yeah, no, exactly. I guess one of the biggest processes that people probably struggle with is the maybe inventory management,
Oh, you mean
Mm.
which
desk
I would think,
piles?
Talk about that.
Anna is expertise in that. So
I mean, I feel like we all are, not just me.
But I feel like you can also eliminate death piles with that. You can eliminate lost products with that. You can eliminate a lot of issues with that. And I kind of do kind of like a similar thing that Anna said. You know, I even like to pre-label the bins. You know, bin has this, you know, number to it. This bin. They already have numbers on them. And then let's say for the hats, all these, you know, all these hats are going to go in this bin, but if there's more room, obviously they're going to go in that one. That bin's done. Let's start the next one. These go in there. Put it in on the SKU and everything. But I also do handwritten on like bin this, has this. So I have like a backup. Yeah. I figured that also really helped me than to just put it in a spreadsheet on, you know, on the Google Drive. But having the backup physically written down really helped me a lot. I feel like it kind of slowed me down, too, by just going straight into the computer. I don't know why. I feel like it was just so much easier to get everything on pen and paper first.
Well, yeah. I mean, before I had my inventory set up the way that I do now, I did a lot more of that. Like, I wrote more of a guide like on the bin sometimes too, and I still had them like labeled like they were, but when I first started it was like sweaters, you know, and then I had so many sweaters it was like red sweaters and blue sweaters, and then so as things kept differentiating I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to just go to like a straight up number system at some point. And of course not knowing I was gonna end up having like 10,000 items in my inventory either, like that's a lot, you know. So then it became like, okay, well, I just need to know what's in bin 1 and what's in bin 2 and whatever. So, but like back, I'm trying to think, there was something you said that just reminded me of something from way back then. Oh, like, so now my bins, just fast forward to present day, right? My bins are a letter and a number, because the letter is basically the shelf unit that it's on, because my shelf units are all on casters and I can move them around, and generally they stay in the same spots, but you know, just in case of having to move one over to like some weird spot at some point, it's like, okay, this is A 1 through like 18 or whatever, and then there's B 1 through 18 and blah 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 like that. So I have all my items, I pull them out of my inventory spreadsheet when they sell, put them on a sold page, and then I sort by the bin number. So all the A's are together, all the B's are together. So when I go over to that shelf, I know I'm pulling stuff from all these bins. And so that's another thing like that makes it really easy, or that I find to be really efficient about having a spreadsheet, is that you can sort the data differently, and then that can give you, that can be your roadmap, you know. But like I didn't used to do that. I used to just be like, let me look at the next one that sold. Oh, it's in bin 34, blue sweaters. Okay, let me go grab it. You know, like that's how I started. Now it's like such a much more like well-oiled machine. But I think something too that helped me get more efficient was, like you said, timing yourself. There is a concept in psychology, and I can't remember like the actual title of it, but the idea is basically that we will take the amount of time we give ourselves to do any task. So if you're I need to clean my bathroom and I'm giving myself 30 minutes, you'll take 30 minutes. If you are like, I'm going to clean my bathroom and I'm giving myself no deadline, you'll take 2 hours. So if you give yourself an actual time limit, then you kind of naturally organize, prioritize, and hustle to get it done. Like you will be surprised at how much you can get done. But I think,
but will it be done right?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Or will you shoot for the moon and land among the stars, and it'll take you 35 minutes, but that's still better than 2 hours, right? It just it depends, but kind of like that also goes back to the idea that processes are usually a result of problem solving, which is a result of having a problem. So also, if you're not sure where to start with, you know, building processes, look at where your problems are, where your pain points are. I mean, even thinking about logging inventory as soon as I get it, you know, think about that. Like, okay, great. I went out yard sailing all day. I got all this great stuff. And now my living room is full of stuff. And that's a problem. So I need a process to address that problem. You know what I
So
mean?
if you have a lot of problem, you have a lot of process to make.
Yeah. You can just drop the mic right there.
Well, I was just gonna say, like when you come back from garage sale stuff, and I mean it's important to have that process to log things in because it's like how much did I pay
Yeah.
for this, how much did I pay for that, and I know people that are. It's like days later, you went to go list it, you have no clue how much you paid for it. You don't remember how much you paid for it. It's
Right.
like you can't have any of that kind of stuff, and then you don't even know if you're really making money when it sells.
Right.
Yep.
Which
So
is a problem.
yeah,
Because you don't have a process.
yeah.
Yeah.
There we
So
go.
you got to tighten up
Yep.
processes.
So, I guess we kind of have like, a little bit more time um to kind of like land the plane. Let's try to go sightseeing a little bit. Talk about process in our particular business and different areas. Let's talk about how do we process our work slash accomplishment when things are not going the way we want it to be.
Hmm. Like, do we blame the process? Do we trust the process? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like right, like okay, we're doing this, and it's like we're not reaching it. I guess what I'm trying to say is like process are good, but process aren't permanent.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Oh, what do you
Mm.
think about that?
Yeah.
Because I think right, certain levels process worked, that process worked, but when you get to a certain next level, all of a sudden that you're not getting the same amount of accomplishment or achievement with that process because that process was built for a smaller scale business. Now
Right.
that you're in a bigger scale business, like wait, like that, why am I not, moving forward? Why am I not gaining traction? Um,
Yeah.
like
Well,
inventory management all of a sudden becomes overwhelming because your process don't work anymore.
that's just like you were saying with, having your shipping box situation kind of streamlined, having the U-shaped photography area. It's like if you're thinking, all right, my goal is to ship 100 things a day, like you have to look ahead and look at, the future reality of that and ask yourself like, is that possible for me to do right now with my current process? Could I ship 100 things a day? Would it like kill me to ship 100 things a day? Would it take me 18 hours because my processes aren't like tight enough? I mean, I think that's a really good question. Like you have to plan for your processes to change. They necessarily will have to change.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think if you're like, there's times too where I know the next day is going to be pretty brutal on the shipping side. Or maybe there's not really a whole lot to ship. Then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can hit sourcing a little earlier. Or maybe, I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm going to be able to source that much today at all because there's a ton of things to ship.
You also have to
So,
just know the rules to know when and how to break them without
yeah.
totally breaking down your whole system.
Yeah. Well, if
Yeah, I
it
mean you
breaks
could.
down, then I'll just go online and just complain that eBay's algorithm is just not selling my
Someone turned off
items
your
or
store.
Yeah, and just
yeah,
make a
turn off my
YouTube video.
store.
Make a YouTube video. eBay's dying.
eBay hates me or
Yeah.
I don't know, something.
But yeah, I mean, I I like that. Process really gets. I feel like process gets you going, right? Build a momentum, and I see it like riding a car. Gets you to the highway. Direction and process gets you to the highway. Gets like okay, I'm heading 2 hours north, right? But it doesn't mean that you're on that highway. Doesn't mean you can't stop. That doesn't mean you cannot pull over and get gas. Doesn't mean that you still have to keep going when a deer crosses the road. Like you can modify, you can alter things, but the process will get you back on track easier if you have one rather than if you don't. It's just having a direction, having a structure. Let's just say like, oh, all of a sudden sourcing's really good. All right, let's chase all these stores, and then now you come home and you don't have a process, and then now you're like overwhelmed, and then now you can't catch up on things, and then now you all of a sudden you going out to find good deals and better deals becomes a negative connotation. It's like, oh, maybe I should not go out and chase all these really good deals because I remember the last time it overwhelmed me. No, it wasn't the deals. The deals was right. The decision to go after deals was a good choice, but because you didn't have a process when you get home, now you kind of like feel like, oh, you blame that positive thing that you did because all of a sudden it resulted to a pain.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the biggest process that I've ever faced was getting like that big Nike haul of it. It was just like shoes with cleats and other things, and it was like 4,200 pairs. And I was like, how am I going to attack this? Number one, I don't have the room for this. So this was before I had the storage unit. So first I have to figure out,
you have that storage unit moment where you're like, yeah, I guess I'm getting a storage unit.
Yeah, exactly.
I had one of those too. Yeah.
And everything was labeled per size and like either men's or women's. So I was like, okay, that's a little bit easier.
Kind of sorted.
Sorted. And then it was like, okay, men's football, size 9. Women's softball, size 7. So now I'm like, okay, well, let me put all these, where they go. But then once you open the box, I noticed that there was like Air Max 1 Golf is in here. The size 9. And then like 4 boxes later, there's the same, it's an Air Max. This is the same Air Max. So now I literally have to go through all of these boxes and put them together
sort them,
by style. Because that wouldn't make sense to, well, I'm just going to list box number 1. And then it's like, I'm going to have that same shoe down the road. It just doesn't make sense to do it that way. I'm going to run into this shoe again. I'd rather just know how many do I have of this one shoe.
Right.
And so I literally had to do that for all 4,200 pairs. And I was going to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, do you feel like that was good? Like that was a good return on the investment of upfront doing all of that sorting? Because I tend to do the same thing. It's like too much mental clutter unless I organize them first thing, sort them in some way based on some kind of criteria, or it just feels like super chaotic. But do you feel like that was definitely the way to go now in hindsight that you've done it?
Oh man, it definitely helped me out because it did take so much time and effort to do that in the very beginning.
Yeah.
But it makes it so much easier now when the item sells because I know exactly where it is. And now even in my storage unit, all the size 10s are in men's are all on one side. All size 9s men's are in this side. And then women's size 7, women's size 8. And even though the boxes are labeled, I still know what area they're in also because of the labeling. But if I didn't do that, and it was really tiring after like the third week, I was like, I'm not going to tackle this. Like this is getting out of control. Yeah. And so, it would just like step by step, size by size, style by style. And just eventually it just got so much easier once I had that process of how long it was going to take, how long I'm going to take doing that compared to shipping and just tackling it every day. And I feel like if you're lost in that death pile, I would do the same thing too, is your best items, try sorting those out first. Items that you got home and there was a hole in it or some sort of defect, figure out what you're going to do with it. Yeah. And just kind of move on and just try to tackle things and little by little every day. Like every little step, they're just going to add up. But you can't just leave it there untouched.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think sometimes too, like if I don't frequently find myself in a position of having a giant death pile, but like even if I just have a lot of stuff from one day of sourcing that's just all fresh and I am gonna like I will process it all in this week or whatever, sometimes it also just helps it's not as overwhelming, if it's organized in some way. But I will sometimes then start with, okay, here's the low-hanging fruit, coffee mugs or whatever, super easy to photograph, or, pins. I can like knock out 100 of these in an hour. That'll be super fast. Let me just get a good head start kind of thing. Or sometimes I will be like, you know what? Whatever is not listed can't possibly sell. So I'm going to start with the most valuable stuff and go from most valuable to least valuable. And, whatever. It kind of doesn't matter. At the end of the week, I still want all that stuff to be listed, but I get to have some control over my experience of doing all of that work by virtue of having it organized, and it's more enjoyable and it's less questions, less stressful, if I do it that way. But in any case, it's like pick some criteria, right? Pick something as your plumb line and organize it based on at least one thing, and then you'll have a starting point and you can just go.
Well,
I agree.
There you have it, guys. I mean, a full hour of talking about process on, talking about how important it is, and talking about starting on creating one. Talking about how we were able to create some processes, and some processes that we implement now may not be relevant for our next level, but that's okay as long as you have one. So I guess the challenge is audit your process. Yeah. And if you don't have a process to audit, then you have a lot of problems.
Start somewhere. Yeah. Well, and the more that you get comfortable making a process in general, the easier it will be for you to level up your process as your business levels up.
Eliminating problems through creating process.
Yes, sir. All right. Trust the process.
Peace.
Bye.
See you next episode. Seller Club Podcast. We out.